and co-writer with Donna of the CalPro module on integrating and contextualizing workplace instruction in the ESL classroom. Previously, I was in charge of ESL staff development for the adult division of LA Unified. Okay, Donna, your turn.
Hi, I'm Donna Price. If you can't hear me or if I'm too loud, please let me know. Type something in the chat pod. I teach Vessel for personal care assistance for the San Diego Community College District Continuing Education Program. I'm also a textbook writer, and I've been doing some training. Okay, I think Rana, you are going to be talking about the purpose.
Yes, the purpose of the webinar today is to give instructors an understanding of what employers want from the workers of the 21st century, and to emphasize the importance of teaching ESL students skills in class that they can transfer from the classroom to the workplace. Donna's going to give us some background information on that.
Yeah, I want you to know that this webinar and the module that Rana and I wrote is really grounded in research. So the next couple of slides we're going to show tells you some background about why we were so involved in this. According to the California Department of Education, in 2009, 5.3 million adults in California didn't have a high school diploma, which means 13.7% of the 38.4 million living in California. 3 million in California spoke English less than well, and these two groups will need basic skills instruction, English language instruction, and other workplace readiness skills training. Okay, the next slide. The next slide talks about changes in the labor force. The current situation is, according to a recent report on adult education published by the California Department of Education, the Strategic Planning Process Needs Assessment, what will the workforce in California look like in the immediate future? From 2011 on, the baby boomer generation will be retiring. That's kind of like us. The report states if current educational policies remain in place, current demographic and educational trends will lead to an economic decline as current workers with language literacy and workplace readiness challenges replace the baby boomers. This will result in a decline in the skill level of the workforce and have a major impact on tax revenues and availability of public and social programs. Okay, next slide. Talks about how to close the foundational skills gap. And this is from the same report by the California Department of Education. A finding from the state's needs assessment is to focus on closing the foundational skills gap in its current working age adult population. The report states that the key foundational skills needs are English language, literacy to post-secondary readiness, and work readiness skills. The next slide is from a paper that I really recommend that you read the entire paper by Mary Gatta from the Center for Women and Work at Rutgers University. It's called High Touch and Here to Stay, Future Skills Demands in Low-Wage Service Occupations. The paper focuses on growing service occupations in the U.S. and the level of skills these jobs require. Agata states that the service occupations are predominantly filled by women, minorities, and immigrants, which in other words are students. And these rapidly growing service occupations are not offshoreable and not replaceable by machines. So these fast-growing service occupations are here to stay. The jobs include healthcare workers, restaurant staff, and custodians. And I think it's interesting to look at the chart which shows the skills that these workers need and for us to think about those skills when we're teaching. Okay, Rana's going to talk a little bit more. Next slide. Rana, did you press the talk button? No.
Okay. We just saw the statistics on the need for adult education in California, and as you know, many of our learners indicate that their immediate goal is to get a job or get a better job. But to do that, they need workforce readiness skills now. So as educators, we need to help students realize that no matter what ESL class or level they're in, they're learning the skills that can be used both in the classroom and in the workplace. So as instructors, we need to understand that we can teach students both language skills and workplace skills simultaneously. And that in this climate, this economic climate as it is now, we have to do that. So in the webinar today, we're going to highlight for you some clear and easy ways to integrate the teaching of workplace skills into our regular teaching practice. So we wanted to start here with a brainstorm. What are some of the transferable skills that students take with them from the classroom to the workplace? For example, they might communicate with their classmates and their teacher in class. Then if we look at that in relation to being a workplace skill, we'd say that communication is a skill that students take with them from the class to the workplace. What are some other skills that students practice in class that they take into the workplace? You'll see a chat pod just to the right of the PowerPoint screen, and we'd like you to type your answers into that chat pod. Following instructions, being on time, teamwork, these are all good answers. Following directions, asking for clarification. Yes, Leslie, cooperating and collaborating. Organization, Branca. Calling in when they can't come to class, speaking politely. Getting there on time, asking for assistance when they don't understand. I'm going to remind everyone, use the chat pod where it says brainstorm transferable skills to the right of the warm-up introduction slide. Getting to work on time, getting to class on time, being friendly. Making a commitment. Okay. So we have some good ideas about some of the skills that students are learning in class and taking with them. We're going to expand on that. Amy, can we go to the next slide? Oh, sorry, go back. Made a mistake. Okay, so Dennis Coates in People Skills Training are you getting a good return on your investment tells us that the soft skills, which is what we're going to talk about next, have to do with how people relate to each other. These are the skills of communication, listening, engaging in dialogue, giving feedback, cooperating, solving problems, contributing in meetings, and resolving conflicts. Many of the skills that you just put into the chat pod. Okay, next slide. Some examples of soft skills are in front of you. They are the interpersonal and communication skills that students learn in our classes. For examples, students work in teams and figure out problems together. That's teamwork and problem solving. Or students have the opportunity to manage time in class by assigning a timekeeper in a group. Or we expect students to come back from break on time. That skill is punctuality. Or students have the opportunity to monitor their own performance by keeping track of their progress on a checklist or a chart, and that skill is self-assessment and self-monitoring. Many of the skills that you just named, but there are others. And as instructors, we integrate those skills into our classroom teaching. They're already a part of our lessons. Students can take these skills that they do learn in our classes from the classroom with them to their jobs. Now, we differentiate soft skills from hard skills. The hard skills are the technical knowledge and skill that one needs to perform a specific job. For example, fixing a car or welding a pipe or taking blood pressure. So hard skills are typically easy to quantify and measure, and they're also easy to train people on, because most of the time, according to Dennis Coates, the skill set are brand new to the learner and no unlearning is involved. Okay, the next slide, please.
Rana, could I comment on something here? A lot
Sure.
of people gave some great examples of different soft skills, and if if you remember scans, scans is still alive and well. It's just called something else. But one of the categories of scans is understanding systems, and most of the soft skills that were listed were the system. The students have to understand the system that they have to follow when they go to school. They have to call if they're going to be absent. They have to bring a binder, and they have to be friendly. And it's the same thing at work. And if we can show that understanding this system connects, it's not just what they do in class, but that there is a connection between our class and what's going on out there in the workplace, I think they'll be much more successful. But we have to keep telling them that. Okay, Rana.
Okay. So if we're thinking about soft skills and hard skills, the hard skills are the technical skills that are required for a worker to get a job. But one of the questions that's often asked in the workplace is, even if you know the hard skills, are they enough to help someone really keep a job and move up in the workplace? So just to look at what employers say about soft and hard skills, Peggy Klaus of Workplace Learning Connections explains that the importance of soft skills is you can have all the technical expertise in the world. That is, you might have all the hard skills that you need, but if you can't sell your ideas, get along with others, or turn your work in on time, that is, the soft skills, you'll be going nowhere fast. And this is how employers look at the workplace. What they think now is that the soft skills are far more important in helping someone retain a job and move up on a job in the workplace.
And
Okay,
and I
next
would
slide.
like,
Oh,
yeah,
go
you
ahead,
can
Don.
go on to that. I just want to say here that I go to many advisory group meetings, which means as a vessel teacher, I go with a vocational teacher, and we go to, for example, auto mechanics, and a lot of the auto mechanic workers in the community come together, and they talk about what they want us to teach our students. And it's interesting that the first half hour is about the hard skills, and the next hour and a half is about soft skills. It's like, would you please tell them not to speak Spanish around me? I don't understand. Would you please tell them to call if they're going to be late? Would you tell them not to be so grouchy? So we found that, of course, they cannot get a job if they don't have the hard skill, but they also can't keep the job if they don't have the soft skills. Okay.
Okay. Um, so we've differentiated between soft skills and hard skills. Um, all the soft skills are what we call transferable skills. And transferable skills means that they're portable and they can be taken from the classroom. So transferable skills means that we integrate them into our lessons and that students take them with them to their jobs from our classrooms or from one job to another job or from being a volunteer or work that they do at home. But these are all skills that can be taken from one place to another. Okay, go ahead, next slide, please. We're thinking about how are the transferable skills taught and when are the transferable skills taught. We want students to move up from entry-level jobs. In order to move up on a job, workers need to have transferable skills. So you'll see from this Venn diagram that we've created that we teach them the basic foundational skills of reading, writing, speaking, and listening in our classes, and we teach them the transferable skills at all levels of ESL, from beginning low through advanced low, into adult basic ed, post-secondary, and career tech ed. The diagram shows that we teach the transferable skills at all levels of ESL and academic work. Okay, next slide, please. So let's talk for a minute. We're going to be using the chat pod on the left side now. Imagine that you have taught your students how to work in a team and collaborate. But the question is now, how would you teach students to identify the skills that they have learned? You know, we want to really think about how that can be done in a classroom. So I'm just wondering if you guys can type into the chat pod any ideas that you have about how you would teach students to identify the skills they've learned. Use the chat pod on the left. You've taught them to collaborate, but how do you teach them to know that they've collaborated? Some reflection time? Okay, and I see we've got at the end of class, list the skills that they practiced. Okay, so you're helping them identify and guiding them. So you would model speaking quickly. That's a good idea, Crystal. And then let them identify, point out that something, okay. Have them ask you to speak slower, okay. So one of the issues that often comes up is how can we help students identify the skills they've learned? They may be doing it in class. We may have done cooperative learning from day one of the classroom, but how can we really help them identify it? And you've come up with a good list of ideas. Give them the list of transferable skills. Have them fill out applications and resumes. Okay, but the question is, how do we, after we do the content-based activity or the strategy that we're trying to teach them, how do we get them to identify what skill they've learned? So we want them to take a step back and identify it. Give a vocabulary word, ask them what they're practicing. Okay, all right, good. So let's go on to the next slide. This may be a helpful strategy that you can use in your classroom. One of the things that I came across last year as I was teaching and looking at this question with my own class was to help the students actually make statements. So as we identified working in a team, and I said to them, you're working in a team. And I could see they kind of took that in at one level. They really, when I said to them the next day, so what skill did we study last night? They kind of blanked out, and I'm sure we're all familiar with that kind of, like, yeah, we did that last night, teacher, but what are we doing tonight? So one of the things that I taught them to do was to make statements for themselves, like, I can work in a team, I can communicate with my classmates, um, and I'm organized, I can bring a binder with dividers and keep my work in order. All of these are things that they know that are expected of them in class and that they do, but having them articulated is a higher level of that. So I created some mixer activities where they could actually walk around and tell each other one of the skills that they had used the previous night. And it's important to not just focus on the content that was studied, but to teach explicitly, like identify the skills being taught and help them articulate what they're studying. Okay, next slide, please. So when we think about how you can teach transferable skills to students in your classes, you want to really do a couple different things. One is to teach explicitly, identify the skills that are being taught to the students, and articulate for them what you want them to study, or what they're going to be studying. For example, tonight we're going to be studying how to read a chart, or today we're going to be working in teams. So to identify and I see, as Betty said, be direct and tell them what skill they're using. Okay. Another way is to provide them a meaningful way to say what they've learned. So focus on the skills that they've learned, not only the content that they've learned. For example, in a citizenship class, telling students that we've just studied about your rights as a citizen, but also tell them about the skills that they've learned. We practiced working in a team this evening. You practiced collaborating with your teammates and listening to their ideas. And also, the day after, you can pose guided questions to them and help them recycle what they learned the previous day. Like, remember when we studied taking an inventory in class yesterday? What skills did you use there? So keep guiding them back in a skills focus. It moves you beyond the content of the lesson and into actually focusing their minds directly on the skills they've learned. Okay, next slide. Go
Okay,
ahead,
I
Donna.
just want to make a few comments what Rana was saying, because I have been doing this for a while and talking about scans, and I just like to share how I think this contextualized learning is different from scans. And I don't think, when we were doing scans and integrating workplace basics, we weren't as explicit. We would do these things, but I think that last step of having students say what they did is missing, and I think that's one of the things that we really want to emphasize today, is that teach it explicitly and make them tell you back what they did. I also want to comment on a few things. Some of you are teaching beginning, high, or intermediate. I would really suggest that you get a guest speaker come out, someone from business. I had a guy from Toyota come out and talk about the soft skills and teamwork, and that he doesn't want anybody to work there that doesn't get along with everybody and doesn't have a good attitude. And that was just the most powerful thing. The next day, the attitude in the class changed. I mean, everybody was helping each other and talking to each other. So I think that's a really good thing to do. Or if you're in a big school and you bridge to vocational classes, have the vocational teacher come in and say, yeah, we teach the hard skills, but that's not all you need. Um, Also, I think Branka typed in when Rana asked the question, how can you teach students to identify skills? It's, the last 3 minutes of class, what did we do today that will help you when you get a job? What does this have to do with the real world out there? And have them make a list of things that they did today. I read a chart, I talked to my classmate, I taught somebody something, I troubleshooted troubleshot the pencil sharpener, whatever. And and the last thing, and this actually came up in my class today, we were doing the whole binder thing, and they were organizing their binder, and then I said to them, what if you go for a job interview and the guy says, why should I hire you instead of someone else? And they just sat there, and I said, well, look at your binder. You're organized, you're efficient, you find things quickly, you know where things are, which makes you a better student, a better learner. So I think really always coming back to that, and then again having them come back and say it to you. Okay, next slide. So this is a pretty common activity that you probably have in your textbook. It's a chart that students have to read. This one happens to be an example of from Ventures Book 1, and it's interpreting information by reading a chart. And we also want to say that in this webinar, we really hope that you're using any textbook and using the textbook. I think more and more we're asking students to take the responsibility and buy a book, and then, actually you have to use it. I mean, teachers that have been teaching a long time, sometimes they'd rather make their own, but I think if we're asking students to buy the book, they should use it. So to connect school to work, an instructor would use a chart and do chart reading and interpreting activities with the textbook material. So, for example, with this chart, the teacher would ask, uh, where are the pens? What item is there only one of? And just to get a general idea of what this chart is. Um, these kinds of questions develop students' skills of reading and interpreting information, and which we'll show you in a few minutes can be transferred to workplace documents, that authentic forms that they're going to have to read at work. So if you look at the skill more carefully, and I see a lot of times that, and I do the same thing, we forget that students, maybe they don't really even have the skill of reading this chart. They don't know how to do it. So, you ask the question, how many erasers do we have? And so the teacher can actually put her finger on the eraser and move the finger over to the number and have the students, one student come up and show how they move their fingers up and down. How many books do we have? And you have to go back to the category that says number and have the students run their finger down the number column to where the books are and have the students tell or teach how many books there are. And I'm sure this looks like something on the CASAS test, so this strategy really comes in handy for CASAS testing to do after the pre-test, so they'll do better on the post-test. I think we take for granted that students know how to read this, and like I said, in a minute I'm going to show you where one of my students got in a lot of trouble at work because he was not able to read a chart like this. Okay, the next slide. Well, actually, it's the next slide. This is an authentic form that one of my students gave me from work. He works at a hotel. He works as a maintenance worker. It lists the daily job responsibilities. You see the duties, and the worker is required to read and interpret the instructions and to perform the tasks whenever it says to perform them. So if you're teaching this, you would ask your students, which day does he have to clean the pool area? And again, you move your finger and you go up and down. Which day does he have to clean the parking lot? And what does he do on Mondays? And so this is an example of teaching the transferable skills of reading and interpreting information, and it falls under information systems and scans. And how does what we do in our classrooms prepare students to read and interpret this kind of chart? Well, it comes from the textbook. You do something in the book, and then if you have an authentic form, you can show it. You certainly wouldn't teach from the form, but at least you would know that what you're doing is related to what they're going to see in the workplace. And I'm going to repeat this later, but I think it's really important to ask your students, can you bring me something that you have to read or write at work? Just for you. You don't have to teach to this or show students, but just so you know, because many of us haven't been out there in the world for a long time. We've been teaching, so we don't really know what goes on. But this student, I had one of the housekeepers from the Marriott, and she was not able to read this correctly. And so, of course, she did something wrong. She didn't do a job when she was supposed to do it because she couldn't read the chart. And, she got in trouble for it. Luckily, she kept the job. But, if we don't teach them the skill of doing this could be really hard for them later on when they go to work. Okay, the next slide. This is taking chart reading one step further, and I think most teachers do this. It's an interactive information gathering tool. So what you do in the class, you have students walk around the room and ask each other questions about what they did after school last week. And as students gather information, they use clarification skills. What did you do? Oh, I can't hear you. Talk louder, talk slower. Please, spell it for me. So they fill in the charts, and in the next step, the teachers can have students report the information back to the whole class. I'm sure this looks familiar to you all. As students look at the class information, they summarize the information while reading the chart. So the teacher would ask specific questions. Who interviewed Maria? Oh, okay, Carlos. So what did Maria do on Wednesday? And by reporting back about what another student did, students interpret information from the chart. Carlos has to find Maria's name, and then he has to run his finger across the top and find Wednesday and run his finger down the chart and find out what Maria did that day. And because I teach a high intermediate class, I would probably put up that maintenance form, the authentic form on the overhead or on the document camera, and I would say, look at this. Doesn't that look familiar to the chart that you just did walking around? This is actually from a student. This is from Miguel. He gave it to me last year. So I think it really gets their interest when they see something that they're really going to see at work. Okay, the next slide. This was very popular when we did the training of trainers. This is elements of contextualized instruction, and I believe you are going to get this entire handout. The chart provides a list of textbook or classroom materials that teach students transferable workplace skills. That's on the left side. It also includes a corresponding list of authentic workplace documents that mirror the documents they would be teaching from in their classroom, and that's on the right column. The activity that we just did is reading a chart from a textbook, and the transferable skill is reading and comprehending workplace documents, which is in the middle, and the authentic form is a work schedule. So while you're teaching from a textbook, the teachers can teach transferable work skills, and they're really integrating all these three things here from this chart. If teachers don't have authentic workplace documents, again, I'm going to say they should think about the skills they may need to teach for their students to successfully use authentic documents from the workplace. Helping students develop these skills in the context and safety of the ESL classroom provides them with the transferable skills that will allow them to successfully function in the workplace. And again, it's always a great idea to ask students to bring examples of workplace documents they have to read or write. And I got a little scared at the training of trainers, the pilot one, not the one in June, because people said, well, I don't have anything like that, and I need something so I can teach it. Well, no, it's not to teach from, but to make you aware of what your students have to do out there. Okay, the next slide. Okay, Ron is going to talk about another activity.
Yeah, this is another page from a textbook. This is Future Book 1. And so here's another example of an activity that we could teach to students. So just from looking at the pictures at the top of the page, what unit would you say that this is from in the textbook? Can you just type in your chat pod? And what do you think the content or the topic of that unit might be? Weather and seasons, seasons. Okay. So one question I just want to pose to everyone is this the workplace unit? Because we want to be clear with everyone that these skills that are workplace skills that can be transferred from the classroom to the workplace don't have to be wedded to the workplace unit. In fact, you can teach them in any unit of the textbook. For example, let's look at this one that's on the seasons, as you name, seasons and the weather, or seasons of the year. And just look at the pictures at the top of the page. If I want you to look at the two pictures, B and C, and also look at the survey at the bottom. And just for your chat, in the chat pod, would everybody please type what transferable skills that you think are taught in this activity. And Amy's going to project a list of possible transferable skills up on the screen on your right-hand side. Okay, and I see Crystal has already typed in small talk. Okay, what are the other, if you're doing a survey and walking around the room, what are some of the skills? And you can look at this list that Amy's put up on the right over here. Reading a thermometer, okay, okay, that could be a hard skill. Completing a chart, listening to others, expressing an opinion, okay. Interviewing and interacting, and we might say communicating and collaborating in workplace terms. That's right, Leaf, reading and interpreting a chart. Any other skills that anyone sees here? Gathering and organizing information, Yeah, so you can see from this examples, again, I'm looking at the skills taught rather than the content, following directions, because just as Donna gave in the example, students would walk around, they would ask 5 classmates about the seasons, they would fill in the chart, and then as Donna was saying with the previous activity, they would have to share the information with the class, and the teacher could summarize the information, and you know, you'll see there's a report back how many people like each season. Reporting results back from a group, that's right, And you'll see that all of these are workplace skills. And another one I see Portia said interpreting symbols, that's right. And also they have still, even level 1, they still have to count here, so there's some mathematical literacy going on here. So all of these are workplace skills. So one of our objectives as presenters in relation to this webinar is to kind of get everybody to recognize that in fact, while you are teaching your regular lessons, you are in fact embedding workplace skills in the classroom. So it's not that you are not doing that. What we now need to do is bring it forward. Okay, so let's go to the next slide, please. So if you think about that one textbook activity that we just did, how do you think that activity, reading a chart, looking at pictures, reading thermometers, how do you think that that relates to an authentic workplace document or form, and that students might use in the workplace? Do you think it's similar to some of the information in the chart that Donna used? Do you think there's other workplace forms that it could be used with? That's right, Vicki. It could be like about reading a work schedule and finding their coworkers' names, shift, and hours, and tasks. Exactly. So there's, there may be, that's right, Bronca. There's job ads, so they still would have to read information across and interpret the information. And also, if we look back at that chart one more time, there are the skills of reading, as you said, reading information, acquiring information, interpreting information, could relate to a production report, taking an inventory. All of these would still be reading and interpreting information. So now Donna's going to talk to you about classroom activities and how they're connected to the workplace.
Hi. Okay. There was something I was just going to say, and it just went by me, but I'll think about it in a minute. Oh yeah, now I know. Um, if if you haven't been or haven't if you haven't been to the module, the actual workshop on contextualized learning that Rana and I wrote that CalPro offers, in the supplemental part there are some authentic documents that I've collected, and we have included them in the modules. So if you're thinking about, oh, where can I get my hands on some of these things, you can get them from if you go to the training. Okay, so talking about a classroom activity in connection to the workplace, I wanted to give you an example of something that we all do, and that's it's something you don't have to even think about. You automatically do it on Monday. What do you do on Monday when you first come back to class after the weekend? Does anybody want to type in what you do on Monday? What's the first thing you ask? Talk about the weekend. Bingo. So on Monday, we often come in, warm-up activity. We ask our students what they did over the weekend. And sometimes it's just informal, ask your partner. But what we could do is have students walk around. That's what we do sometimes. And interview each other, survey each other, and take notes on what their classmates said, and maybe tabulate on each other's weekend activities. So when they're seated, the teacher has some of the students tell what one or two of their classrooms said about their weekends, or the teacher can ask, how many people cleaned their house? How many people went to a movie? So you can do a kind of a tabulation, a little mathematical thing, and you can even get into percentages if you want. And then, so here, what skills are being taught? And how can the teacher help her students know what skills are taught? So in this activity, some of the skills students are practicing are asking questions, making small talk, interacting with others, clarifying, speaking clearly so that others understand, and listening carefully in order to be able to report back that person's answer. And I hope these are all sounding familiar. These are all workplace basic skills. So usually after an activity like this, students would report back, and that would be the end of it, right? We just say, oh, okay, what did she do? And oh, Mary said this, or Carlos said this. But to go one step further to connect the class with the workplace, teachers could teach the skills explicitly and help students articulate what they did. So for example, the teacher would say, what did you do in this activity? And the students would say something like, ask a question, talk to my classmates, speak clearly. I had to repeat myself and I had to listen. So the teacher would say, do you think these are skills you might have to do at work? And then ask students who are working if they have to do these things, such as ask questions, listen carefully, and make small talk. And people are going to, the light's going to go off. Say, oh yeah, of course we're going to have to do these things, or we do these things at work. And what about at a job interview? What if the interviewer asks you what you do in your English class? What can you say after doing this kind of activity? And the students, you can teach the students to say, I can ask and answer questions. I can listen and take notes on what someone says. I can speak clearly so others can understand me. So you can teach them that. You can do a dictation on that. And so they really know how to say what they're doing. So the next question is, I think it's the next slide. how many of you feel comfortable using this model of explicitly teaching the skills being used and helping students articulate these skills? Do you feel like you could do something like what Ron and I have been talking about? So that's not a rhetorical question. It's a real question. So good. Thank you very much. It's really strange not hearing anything. Oh, thank you. Okay. Um, one thing that I hear a lot when I go to these advisory group meetings is people have to get along. We don't want people here that make trouble or that don't get along. So I think the whole sociability thing and the social part of work that happens is very important. And doing it in our classes, we automatically do it. We have a lot of community building and team building things, but to now connect it with the workplace is very important. Okay, the next slide.
All right, hi, this is Rana. So what we want to talk about now is how would you apply what we've talked about in today's presentation? How would you, in fact, integrate soft skills into your textbook lessons next week? So maybe what we'd like you to do is type in the chat pod, and we'll all be reading and see some of the ideas of how you think you might integrate soft skills into your textbook lessons next week. Again, recognizing that we know that you're teaching these skills already, but how would you integrate the explicit teaching? How would you help students identify what they're learning? How would you get them to articulate what they're learning? And how would you get them to take it to their jobs? So go ahead and type into the chat box any ideas you have about that.
I don't see anybody writing
Okay.
anything. So what I'm thinking is if you can just, sometimes you have an idea, but it's not a concrete idea, but just think of one thing that you might try next Monday. Just one thing that you'll do in your class that we've been talking about here.
And you might want to bear in mind Donna's example of how she asked students what they did over the weekend, but then what she does with that to bring out the workplace skills.
Oh, good. I just saw making I statements. I just think that is such a great technique that Rana has been doing. And I can, and I do something.
Oh, I like what Judy and Marilyn suggested about distance learning, because you have that one-on-one, and asking students, really pumping it up so that you get them to articulate it, because that's the step that we've been missing with is not having students really start to understand and articulate what they've been learning in the classroom. Have a lesson on reading work schedules. Oh, wonderful idea.
And then do the lesson just like you normally would do, and then say, do you think you're going to see this out in the workplace? And how many people that are working have seen something like this? It's really fun when you have people that are actually working right now because they have a lot of stories.
And any kind of, they could bring in any kind of schedule. It could be a swimming schedule or a exercise schedule. So you can ask people to bring in real life documents so that you can go over it, a library schedule for when there's a children's hour at the library. It's all schedule reading, and it's all reading and interpretation. I like this idea of having students report back on what they learned so that they can use in their workplace. Ah, good. Okay. You know, Gemma's got a great idea here. After a conversation activity, writing the soft skills on the board and relating it to the workplace. So, you know, you can say, you know, we just did cooperative learning. What are the skills? And then, you know, you can help them. You know, do you think we used do you think we worked together? That's called collaboration, and then you can write collaboration on the board. Do you think you talk to each other and listen to each other? That's communication. Write communication on the board. So the more explicit you can be and the more consistently you do that, just like we write a classroom agenda on the board, the more you can do what Gemma's suggesting about after any activity and writing it on the board. It's a great idea.
And especially I love that about reviewing afterwards. And did you teach somebody something? Oh yeah, I taught somebody. Did you work well in your team? Yes, we get along well. We got along. Teach that expression. I get along well with people from different countries. I get along well with my classmates. Um, I'd like to say something, a couple things that I was thinking about. Um, and I've always been saying this when I learn from scans, and it's the same thing. It's not what you teach, but it's how you do it. So we're talking about any context here, math or whatever it is. It's how you go about integrating these workplace basics. And then I want to talk one more say share one more story. When I first started teaching Vessel and I had my students in groups and they were doing a problem solving and they were discussing, you know, solutions and consequences, and they were doing all the things that they should be doing at work. And after the class, a couple of them came up and they said they wanted to go back to the other ESL class. And I said, why? And they go, well, you know, we want to learn English. And I said, well, you know, what do you think you've been doing for the past hour and a half? You've been talking and negotiating and solving problems. And they go, well, we want grammar. You know, we need to learn more grammar. So what I learned from that was to say, well, okay, today you're going to learn grammar. And I put grammar on the agenda, and you're going to learn should and ought to, and you're going to learn how to use the correct form of the verbs. And then, you know, I have them do the same exact thing in their groups. But I think sometimes we have to be really careful that we don't get overexcited with this, and students don't understand what you're trying to do, and they feel like they just want straight English. So I think in a way you have to kind of fool them a little bit into thinking they're doing something, and really they're doing a lot more. I'm looking now at some of these other things.
I like what Barbara wrote here about students finding errors in sentences, because after they do that, any kind of editing or revising activity, they're practicing correcting their own work, because self-monitoring and taking personal initiative and evaluating your own work and going through performance evaluations are clearly work skills. But again, we want to make sure that they connect what they're doing in the classroom to the workplace. And I love Leaf's idea about making a list of skills on the board and having them check that off, or giving them a weekly inventory. You know, what did we do this week? And you can list some of the skills that you practiced, and they can check that off and keep those in their notebooks. That actually, Leif's idea about having a checklist with transferable skills is excellent, because even at a very low level, a beginning level, you know, if you can say, I communicated with my classmate, I talked to my classmate, and check it off, that's a transferable skill. And so at very low levels, you guys can start integrating this with students. You know, I worked in a team, and they check it off. Oh, look at Leslie. Good for you. You've posted the soft skill we're highlighting that day on the agenda itself. Wonderful. So you list what the activities are, and then you list what's being highlighted. Terrific idea.
Yeah, I think that now we're required to put our SLOs in our syllabus and everywhere. And I think putting our transferable skills is just as important as putting our SLO. It means a lot more to the students anyway. Um, and we got a message from reminding us that, you know, when you ask students what is your goal, many times they will say to get a job. And so we have to remind them that, you know, one of our goals is to get you ready for work. And so when we do these kinds of problem solving and jigsaw and these kinds of activities, this is really going to help you connect or transfer to the workplace, because not only are you learning grammar and vocabulary, but you're learning how to interact with other people. So I think it's always good to remind them of what we're doing and why we're doing it. So do you feel like you're going to try this next week? I did notice someone asked about specific examples. Um, it was earlier when someone said it would be nice to have, here we go, from Vicky, if we had more substantive notes of these examples and questions, you could pass them on. Um, I know that in the module that we wrote, we have a facilitator's guide and we have the participants guide, and I think when you attend the workshop, I think everything is pretty much written out. Amy, I think, is that correct? And I don't know if you mean more examples than what we've given today, or these examples today, because this is recorded. So I guess if you wanted to go back and hear the examples again, you could listen to the recording.
And Anna, I just wanted to interrupt you. I'm
Okay,
going to
so
let
Amy
everyone
answered
know
yes, that's
in this
correct.
webinar
Can't even remember what the
when
question is
next
now.
CalPro face-to-face workshops are on the module that you and so they could attend a face-to-face sessions that has more materials that both of you had provided for this CalPro workshop. And I will let them know that what we're developing now in terms of the online version of your workshop. So I'll let everybody know that at the end so that anyone who has questions about workshops in different locations in California that you can attend in person, please wait until the very end and I can give you more information about that. So yes,
Okay. There's Vicky's response. I mean, these types of examples today written up. I've been to the workshop, got a lot of materials. However, a few simple pages of examples like these would be powerful. Amy, are the I statements and some of the examples, those are included in some of the handouts that are connected to the workshop, correct?
Instruction handouts, the
To this
two-pager,
training?
and then the list of soft, hard, and transferable skills.
Yeah.
And then this PowerPoint presentation that everybody is seeing in front of
Okay. Okay. I want to respond to, this is Rana, I wanted to respond to one of the comments from Laura, who said she's going to have her students work in groups tonight. And that's excellent. What I want to just kind of remind all of us is one of the essential things about what this training is about is that as you're doing that, you want to help students identify what skills are being taught. So you as the teacher would want to say, tonight we're going to be doing a cooperative activity. You're going to be working with a partner. You're going to be collaborating and listening to people in your group. You're going to be responding to them. And then after the activity is completed, have the students articulate the skills that they used in the activity. So not only the content of what did we study, but what skills did we use tonight? And if they don't remember or they don't know, you guide them and say, did we work in a group? Did you collaborate with your classmates? Did you listen to someone else's idea? Did you solve a problem? And then again, the next day, go back and say, what skills did we use? So I think those 3 points, identifying the skills being taught, having the students articulating the skills, and then reviewing them the next day. And then we've had some really good ideas about having a checklist and listing the soft skills on the board, so that that repetitive activity will teach students to start to consciously identify and be able to articulate what skills they've learned.
And one more thing too, Rana said, have students identify the skills and students articulate it and review it the next day, but say, these are skills that you're going to need at work. And keep saying, this class will help you get a job and get a better job and stay at your job. So it's not, these are skills for work.
So, it's interesting because I'm thinking about, when we practice job interviews with students, we're very conscious to get them to say, okay, tell me about yourself. And clearly that's a good place to start the I can statements. I can organize my work. I can come on time. I'm punctual. I can work in a team. But we don't always think that that information can be transferred to any of the activities that we're doing in the classroom. And I think that's the essence of what we want you to see today, is that not only in a workplace lesson or a job interview lesson, but in every activity that you do within any textbook, the skills are transferable. And that's why the contextualized skills chart that you're going to get at the end that shows you what's in a textbook, what skills are used, and how that relates to authentic workplace documents is so important, because those skills are taught throughout the semester with any textbook and any ESL material.
Yay, Rana, well said. I love that because I keep forgetting to say that, don't wait till the work unit. You just do it from day one. I think we're going to be hearing that a lot more now with the newer legislation coming down, that we have to be getting our students more ready for work faster.
I have to say, in LA Unified, I'm in a system where many of the classes, a lot of the funding has been cut, and as a result, they're looking at, how are we moving people towards jobs? How are we moving people towards academic programs? What are their career goals? So what we're speaking of today has impact on every
Thanks, Rana.
program out there, and you all know the same things that we're saying about
Let me
that.
actually go directly to the CalPro
Okay, Amy,
offerings, because I think
you're on.
it seems like a lot of people might be interested in this. So in front of you on your screen, you'll see some of the things that we are offering. And I think this would address Vicky's comment about webinars being a great vehicle modality to engage in professional development, and we agree with you. And that's one of the reasons why we initiated this new instructors. And so today we're focusing on ESL instruction, but we're also offering the same webinar on a similar topic in November for ABE ASE instructors. So if you have colleagues at your agency who would recommend this type of format, please let them know that CalPro is offering this webinar, and it's going to screen the date and the time. Also, the face-to-face version of this module that Rana and Donna wrote, and they did the trainings for this last year. They piloted it, and then they also trained CalPro presenters to present these workshops throughout the state. So we've had several people, actually Leslie is one of them, who presented session 1. It was 3 hours a day, and she's doing session 2 on November 3rd. So if you're in the Bay Area, please check out our event calendar and the dates and time in the San Jose area. Also, we have another session in San Diego that's going to be going on Then Rana is going to be presenting in Southern California at Bassett Adult School on November 3rd and December 6th. So if you want to participate in the full 6 hours on 2 different days, of course, 3 hours on each day, you should definitely look at the CalPro event calendar and register for it. And so you'll get to meet Rana in person if you haven't already done so. And Vicki, I think you'll be interested in the next 2. We're offering the 6-hour module as an online course. And so starting in January and May, it's going to be a 4-week facilitated online course where participants can log in whenever they want to a website and read materials and do reflection questions and post them for other participants to read. So we're launching those. These are brand new, and it's going to be offered in January and again repeated in the schedule on our website under online courses. And another thing we're developing is if you like this online meeting environment that's synchronized, meaning everyone comes in at the same time and participates together, we're offering this module as an online workshop. So that's coming in the springtime. And look for our calendar in February for more information. And then the last bullet here on your screen, coming soon, you're going to see a virtual workroom that Rana and Donna actually contributed many materials for. It's a virtual workroom on career pathways or career readiness. You can call it either. And you'll see some examples from the module as well as new examples. So we're trying to offer various ways of accessing all these materials. So please keep these in mind and visit our website for more information. And definitely go to the events calendar and the online courses tab. Those are the 2 main tabs you should probably check out. So that is what CalPro is offering and developing. And I know people have asked about references, so let me just show you some of the references that we used during this presentation. And you're going to get access to this file, this PowerPoint file, at the end. So one thing is the last one, it says Marigata. This one is the one that Donna mentioned when she was presenting. And it's high touch and here to stay, future skills demand. So if you copy and paste this link at the very end, put it into your internet browser, you'll be able to download this report for free. So these are some of the references that we used. Now I wanted to ask for your feedback. So you're going to see your screen changing. And the first thing I want to do is I will point out the 4 statements up on top. If you could just vote on how you felt about this webinar. The first question is, or the first statement is, the instructional strategies presented are relevant to my strongly agree, agree, disagree, or strongly disagree. And you can do that for the 4 boxes on top. What I wanted to point out was the bottom pod at the very bottom of your screen, and you'll see where it says File, Share. And each person basically can see 4 files, but they're probably numbered in different orders. So if you click on Name, it's going to renumber for you. The file that's number 1 is says how to set up optional microphone. You probably don't need that now. So go to file number 2. It says Contextualizing ESL Instructors Forum Slides. If you highlight that by clicking on that title, then you'll see Save to My Computer button. It's going to be activated, and if you click on Save to My Computer, your internet browser will open, and it's going to ask you to click to download. And so when you click on that, you can open it up with Adobe Acrobat or Adobe Reader, and you'll see the presentation slides from today. And you can do that for all of these files that are in this pod. So we have the instructor forum slides that you saw today. You also have the elements of contextualized instruction handout that Rana and Donna were referring to. Then the third file listed there as number 3 is the handout on soft, hard, and transferable skills. So feel free to just click on those titles and click on Save to My Computer, and you'll be able to download them directly to your computer. So if you could finish voting for those 4 statements and just giving us feedback, because this is our first Instructors Forum webinar, and we want to make sure that we addressed your concerns and we addressed items that you wanted to cover. And it will help us and inform us to make our webinars better for the next time we offer. So if people would like to comment more about the webinars and how to make it better, please feel free to do so in the chat pod on the left, as you have been doing. And that way it will help us to keep notes and keep track of the ways we can improve professional development offerings online. And as you're doing that, I wanted to make a few announcements. One is in the PowerPoint slides that you downloaded, called Contextualizing ESL Instructors Forum slide. The very last slide has contact information of Rana and Donna and myself. So you'll see our email addresses. And so if you wanted to contact any of us, feel free to do so. And I'll try not to echo. Sorry about that. And the other announcement I wanted to make, and I'll put it up so you can see it better. But I mentioned this earlier in the webinar, but we have, CalPro is doing a webinar with researchers, and you might be interested in this. It's for adult ESL learners. And so it's called the Adult Education Webinar Research Webinar Series, and it's going to be on the ESL Explicit Literacy Impact. And it's on December 7th from 11 to 12. And we have Dr. Larry Candeli of American Institutes for Research present what he's been engaged in, and actually programs in California have participated in this research. He's looking at interventions for adult ESL students who are learning to read and write. And they wanted to compare and see if adult learners who are going through a curriculum for explicit literacy are improving their skills. And so he's going to tell you about the study, how it's funded, who's involved, what interventions teachers use in their classroom. He'll tell you more about the design. And so if you're interested in that, please go to our website and register for the event, and I will. So if anyone has any other information that they would like to share, or if you have any other comments you'd like to post, please do so in the chat pod. And as you're doing that, let's give Rana and Donna a round of applause by clicking on your My Status bar and select the applause button. Because they did a great job with presenting all this information online. It's very difficult to see people's reactions and responses. So let's just thank them for their perseverance and being able to tell us how, as teachers, they're able to communicate transferable skills. So thank you, Rana and Donna. And do either of you want to say anything else before we finish the webinar?
Oh, this is Dawn. I just want to thank everyone for coming out here in the afternoon, on Thursday afternoon. It was an interesting experience.
And this is Rana, and we'll be interested to hear any ideas that you have or any ways that you may be implementing these skills with your students. And at the end of the PowerPoint, which is on the list that Amy gave you under the file share, you'll be able to download our contact information, and we'd love to hear more from you or questions that you have. So please feel free to contact us.
The meeting, please do so by going up to meeting at the upper left part of your screen and just click on exit, connect